Hello, students of the HPC tool subject of the Master in HPC. This video is to show you how to use a Docker container to set up and deploy your HPC application and its dependencies. So in order to do this, we are going to use Docker. So first we have to make sure that Docker is installed in our system. Okay, so I make in my system, in my distro, apt get install Docker, and I'm trying to install it. So it is already installed in my system, then I don't have to do it. And also I have to check that the Docker daemon, Docker-d, is running in my system, and is actually running in my system, which proves that I don't need to run it again. If I need to do so, I have to make Docker-d, okay, and I will execute, or I will run this command. Okay, so now what I need to check is which images are available in my system, and I see that there are not any images. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to try to recover a minimal image, in my case of Ubuntu. This is the thing that I want to do. Okay, but for this, in order to recover this image, okay, I have to go to hub.docker.com, and in there you need to register with an ID, an email address, and a password. So you are going to create your own account in Docker-d. Okay, so you need to sign up in Docker Hub, and there you are going to get your own credentials. Once you have done so, you need to come back here and make sudo docker login, and it's going to ask you this command for your credentials. You introduce these credentials, and now your local Docker system is connect properly to the Docker Hub using your own account. Okay, so this is a previous step that you have to follow in order to be able to do something with this. And now you can recover, for instance, a Docker minimal image, for instance the minimal image with Ubuntu. So it's going to connect to Docker Hub, and in the Docker Hub is going to recover the latest version of the Ubuntu minimal image. So now when I try to do image, you will see that the image that I have available is this one, the Ubuntu one. Okay, so what we are going to do in this tutorial is to download a library that is called NCT. Is related to Acclimate application, but this is not really relevant to follow the tutorial. The thing is that in order to be able to compile and then later to run this application in a machine, we have to resolve several dependencies. For instance, it requires Fortran, it requires MPI, and what we want to do is to create an image that brings this application inside, and that can be correctly compiled and execute within that image and within any container that instantiates this image. So as we don't know really which are the dependencies of this software, we are going to enter into an interactive session. In this case, we are going to enter into an interactive session of the Ubuntu minimal image. So we run this, and now if I go to another terminal, I can make sudo docker ps And here I can see that I have one container running 13 seconds ago, running an instance of image Ubuntu, and is in an interactive session because it's in a bash, okay, in the bash command. And this is what we have here. Now we are within a container which is an instance of this image Ubuntu. And here is where we are going to download our application. We are going actually to clone the Git repository of this application, where we are going to set up the proper environment to be able to compile the software correctly, and then to be able to run and execute the software correctly. So before we do anything within the container, we have to update the sources. Notice that we are now the user root, so we have permissions for this. So we made the update, and now we can install several things. Let's recall that this is a Ubuntu minimal image, so it doesn't have almost anything. For instance, it doesn't have the Git program that we need to clone the repository that we want to compile. It doesn't have the sudo application if we want to give additional permissions to some users, or it doesn't have any text editor like Ping. So we are going to install these three pieces of software first. So apt-get, install, git, sudo, bin. It asks me if I want to do it, and I say yes. Okay, and now that these three pieces of software are already installed, and as I don't want to make everything as root, I'm going to create a user, and the name of this user, you can choose a different one. In my case, it's going to be my user. So now I have to put the password that I want to set, in this case twice, and then I put a name for the user, and the other fields are going to be blank. Is this information correct? Yes. And now I have a new user that is called my user. But I want to give additional permissions to my user to be able to install software from that account, because if not, we are going to have to be switching all the time between the root user and the regular user, my user. Okay, so in order to add my user to the list of sudoers, that is really what we want to do, I'm going to execute this command: sudo add user, my user, sudo. Okay, so this is adding this user to the user system, to the sudoer system, and now I can enter as my user. You can check that now you are my user and not root anymore. And if I make cd, I will see that I'm redirect to the home directory of my user. From there is where I can, or I want to clone the software from GitHub of the library that I want to compile, that is NCT. Okay, so the software is cloned, and now I can go to the NCT directory, and in there I have all required to compile this software. This software is use AutoTools to be configured, so before I can make the software I have to make /configure, and it's going to try to find in my system the appropriate software to compile NCT, the NCT library. But for instance, you can see that I need the GCC library. So I have to make, sorry, in this case, sudo apt-get install GCC, I put a password for my user. Yes, I want to install this software, and now the software is installed. I can try to compile it again, so it tells me that it needs also Fortran, and I'm going to do this all the time. Check if I can configure the software to compiler, see which is missing now, etc., etc. And from this interaction, I was able to know that this software, besides GCC and GFortran, it needs also Automake, Make, and an MPI implementation. In my case, I'm going to use MPitch. Okay, so I install all the software that is required to compile NCT, the NCT library, and now I have everything set up, and I'm going to install it in a separate directory, in this case NCT install, so I have to create this directory, and now when I'm configuring the compilation I have to specify where I want to install the library, okay, with dash prefix. Okay, so now I can make, this is compiling actually the software, and then I can install it. And now if I see what is here, I will see that I have two directories included with the header files, and leave with the libraries that have been generated. Because this library, NCT, is really a library, so when I install the library, it's really installing all these header files and all the libraries to compile any other software that wants to make use of this library. But we want to check that this is really working, and for this, inside the directory NCT, we have another directory examples with some examples that use the library, and it has its own make file, so I can make, and now within the simple directory I have several binaries, and in this case I'm going to try this one. Okay, as it is an MPI program, this one requires at least 3 processes to run properly, so I have to put MPI run dash mp3 and then to con. Okay, so I run it and I see that this is really working correctly. Okay, so now I want to save these changes in the container to the image, because obviously I have run an instance of the Ubuntu image. I have made change in this container, but obviously these changes are not automatically translated into the corresponding image. So I want to commit these changes to a specific image that I'm going to call NCT. So in the future, if I want to use this application again, instead of having to go through this process from the beginning to the end, I have this image set up to be run anywhere. Okay, so in order to do this, I'm going to run again the command ps. Sorry, and now I can identify that there is only one container running, and this is the container that I want to commit. So I'm going to make sudo docker commit the ID of the container and then the name that I want to give to the corresponding image. In my case, I'm going to call it NCT. okay, sorry, is sudo docker sorry, I put 3 amps, is 2 amps. So do sudo docker commit the ID and NCT. So now I can safely exit from the container. So I'm now out of the container, and I can make sudo docker image to see a list of the images that are available. And I can see that one of them is the NCT image. So what I want to check right now is that I run NCT, this image, I have access to the container that I had before, with everything configured to execute the examples of the NCT library. So I run it, but I want to run it better interactively. Okay, so I'm in now. I have to choose my user, the NCT, ls. I can see the software in there, and in examples simple, I have the binaries already prepared. I can try to execute with 3 processes the application to come, and it's working correctly. Okay, so now I have an easy way to give access to this library and its examples to any user. But obviously I have this image in my machine, and what I want to do is to push it or to take it to the hub, the Docker hub, in order to be used by me in any other location, or in order to be used by anybody, okay, that have access to this image. So in order to do this, first I have to make sure that I'm logged. First I exit from the container. Again, I have to put terminal. Okay. So now I can try to make sudo docker login. That's it for the root password. Okay, and as I have already logged before, it's not needed to be done again. Okay, so now what I want to do is to tag the image that I want to download to the Docker Hub with my username and a tag. In this case, I'm going to call it my username, which is Diego Andrade, my username in Docker Hub, and the tag, which is NCT. Okay, so I have to put, sudo docker tag NCT, and then the name in the Docker Hub. Okay, so now I can make sudo docker push my username NCT, and this is pushing this image to the Docker Hub to be available from there in the future. It's uploading a lot of information because the weight of this file is 400 megabytes of information, and this information is sent to the Docker Hub. Okay, so now, okay, it will take some time to upload, but now if I want to use this software from any other location, I can log in to Docker using my own account. Okay, in this case it's not necessary because I have already logged, and then I have to make pull my username / and the name of the image, so I can recover an image to be used in my own local machine. Okay, so this is what we have available right now, and if you look at the images that are currently available, we have this one that is the remote one. Okay, but obviously something that is a bit annoying about the image that we have just created is that it's not going to run the application automatically, because first you have to show or to enter as my user, then you have to go to the appropriate directory, and then you have to MPI run the application. But you have a method to be able to configure further the image, and this is the Docker file. So in this case, this Docker file is defined using as a base this image, that is the one that we have already created, but now I add additional configuration. In my case, it's going to be that the user is going to be always my user, so it's going to use automatically this user, and that the working directory is going to be home my user. Okay, and now when it's starting, this is not important, the entry point, the first application that is going to be run is MPI run with all these parameters, which is -mp3 to use 3 processes, and then the name of the binary that is going to be executed. So with this Docker file, what we can do is to make sudo docker build -t nct chown point. So this is going to build a new image whose name is going to be nct chown. So it's a special version of nct that is going to execute always this binary automatically, and then in order to configure it, we are going to use the Docker file that is in the current directory. So I put a dot and I execute this, and this is going to do all the required configurations. So now if I make sudo docker image, you can see that we have available this image, and we can run it, sudo docker run nct chown, and you can see that what it does is to start the container, an instance of this image, and run automatically the entry point. The entry point is that application that we want to run. So it's very easy also to create an image not only that is able to give you access, automatic access to your environment where NCT library is compiled, but also that is able to execute every time the container is run automatically to run a given application. And this is what is happening now. Okay, so you can see how useful can be Docker in HPC environments to deploy your software easily without having to follow very verbose and difficult instructions. So that's it. See you in the next video.